Hello, ladies and gentlemen, metalheads all over the world, across the pond, across the ocean, whatever the saying goes. I don't know. It's hard to keep track at this point, but regardless, welcome back to the Horsemen podcast. Now, there was the little highlight video last week, but it wasn't a full episode. This is our first episode in almost 6 months, but I am back, and this time we have another special guest. Please welcome to the show, currently live in Incantation and Morbid Angel, but also in Sonic Deity and Ascended Dead, among so many other bands, because he's been in many, Mr. Charlie Koryn.
Thanks for having me.
No problemo. How are you, buddy?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good as well, and yeah, this is a episode that's been coming for quite a few weeks. Considering I just recently reached out to you on Instagram because I was already a pretty big fan of your drum work, especially on this album, the last Ascended Dead album.
Oh, cool.
And of course, me being a drummer, well, pretty bad drummer, but me being a drummer, I always appreciate awesome drum stuff. And of course, Charlie here, ladies and gentlemen, for those that don't know, like I just brought up, most notably known for being a live drummer currently in Incantation and Morbid Angel, but of course in Send the Dead, Sonic Deity, also live in Rude, I believe.
Yeah, I did. I played with them. I did a couple shows. This was like maybe, I don't know what year. It must have been like 2017 or something. Maybe 2016. I played with Rude. Um, I did a show in Japan with them, and then did. I think we did another local show in Portland just while we were rehearsing. But yeah, they've been good friends of mine for a long time. We did some shows with on the first Ascended Dead tour with Rude. Um,
Awesome.
so yeah, that's another just kind of buddies that were, hey, our drummer left, you want to fill in for some shows, and I'm always happy to join new projects and stuff and keep busy. So
Absolutely. And of
yeah,
course, Funebrarum. I mean, there's a bunch. I had to go all the way to the Metal Archives just to find out, like, all the bands that you're in, or have been in, or at least have
right.
done session work. But, and well, ladies and gentlemen, we just got a run in. It's, well, I would say a joke I said before, but I ain't going to, otherwise he'll just shit on me for it. But my co-host Ricky joined in like a professional wrestling run-in, essentially.
Kick
Um,
out of two.
yes, you did. But so to get to the question that, or to the first thing, the origins of the metalhead within all of us, because we're always fascinated by how people get into metal and like who are bands or musicians that really opened your, like, it opened your third eye and thinking, wow, this is amazing stuff. So for you, Charlie, how did you become a metalhead, or really just how you got into music at first and then eventually?
Well, I think music was sort of always around. I don't ever remember there being a time where there wasn't music either in the house or around, or just like I feel like I've always just had music and like just rhythms in my head, even before I picked up an instrument or anything. So I think that's just kind of how my brain has been wired. I don't know if it's a generational thing or what it is, but I've always been intrigued by music, and I guess getting into heavier music and like playing heavier music. Um, I guess I could note bands and things, but I like the more I think about it, it seems like even with most of us, there's something else in our in our brain, or maybe like the way your childhood was or something that draws you to this type of music. I mean, of course you hear heavy bands and you're drawn to it, but it's got to be much deeper than that. Um, but I guess like it's probably similar for a lot of people. It's like starts with listening to rock and roll and hearing distorted electric guitars, and with me it was like probably Black Sabbath, Jimi Hendrix and stuff. I was big into Jimi Hendrix and like Mitch Mitchell when I was growing up, learning how to play drums and like messing around with electric guitars and stuff. Something, yeah, you're just as a kid you're drawn to stuff that's real intense and loud, and just gets your blood pumping. So as soon as you start hearing more intense, heavier stuff, it's like it just draws you in, and
Yeah, it's
you
so
don't really think about it, and you don't really
yeah.
look back. It's always tough for me to think about like defining moments because it's I feel like I was just looking ahead and like trying to find stuff that was just more intriguing to me. I never really like
Mhm.
sat around and thought about certain moments that drew me into heavy music.
Yeah, it's a complete rabbit hole once you start this journey, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've been a metalhead since I was like 8 years old. I've been going on for like, I think I'm going on for 21 years next year,
Yes.
maybe the end of this year. And of course, when you get into metal, you obviously want to start playing with bands or want to check the local scene. So how was your local scene? And yeah, you're from what, California originally, San Diego?
Yeah, from San Diego. So
Yeah.
there was a couple of all ages venues, and that's really when I saw like, like death metal bands and super intense extreme
Mm,
metal bands where I was like, whoa, this is awesome. I need to dive into this and figure out. It was really just like interested in figuring out what people are doing on their instruments and like how they're
mhm.
getting to this point.
Any band in particular that you were like, I have to go see them like now during your time there?
Um, Maybe nothing, not really anything in particular, but I was even like local bands that because when you're a kid, like a 10-year-old kid, and you're going to shows, you're like, even if it's a local band that now I would see, and it's like, oh, you can tell it's maybe their first couple shows. When you're a kid, it's all new to you, so you're intrigued about what
Mhm.
everyone's doing, and like it's all like, yeah, it's just like catches your eye and does something where it draws you into it, and it almost, I think, is some sort of escape from like just everyday life stuff. You go to these shows and it's just loud guitars and tense drumming, and you can't really think about anything else except for what's in front of you. And then being a musician before I was into metal or any of that, I was just more intrigued on what they're doing on their instruments. And I know like for playing drums, it's really technical, really fast stuff. So I came from playing like rock and roll and somewhat of like a jazz background and stuff.
Mhm.
So then hearing intense music, I'm like, well, I have to get into this.
The natural progression,
Mhm.
especially coming out of jazz, because see,
Yeah,
I mean, we could go on and on about into the rabbit hole of like drummers and metal that incorporate a lot of
yeah,
jazz. I mean, hell, you could
Oh
trace that back
God,
to Bill Ward, who
Billboard
God bless him
Blues
yesterday.
also.
God bless Bill
oh
Ward
yeah,
yesterday killed
amazing.
it on that Sabbath show.
Yeah, that's without without that guy, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. And then again, without Black Sabbath as a
Um,
whole, none of us would
Yeah,
be here in terms of
yeah,
right.
I
metalheads or
know,
metal as a whole.
but then again, if you want to go down this rabbit hole, Buddy Lewis, the
Yeah,
or
yeah.
one of the originators, so it's a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. You can go down it forever. I'm just fortunate that there's been like-minded people for generations and generations.
Yeah, and as long as people
mhm,
like us are around, that will never. Just
Yeah, I
like,
think it's
just
great.
like,
mhm.
just like physical media, obviously.
Oh
Yep.
yeah,
But now that kind of leads me into the other side of the spectrum for you when it comes to metal is that you are a audio engineer.
Yeah,
How did you become interested in that side of it?
that really, like, really fully getting obsessed and getting into it. Was really just out of necessity. Like when you're a young band forming and you need to get recordings, and you're also a kid that doesn't really have any money, and a group of kids that don't have any money, you're just doing whatever you can to do these budget recordings. And I just got frustrated on like nobody. The hardest thing is really getting a good drum sound. It's easier with plugins and stuff, and now you can get a pretty decent guitar tone, but with drums, there's just so many variables. You need to make sure the drums sound good. You're dealing with a lot more microphones working together, and then you have need to have like a solid nowadays a solid computer that can handle all of it, and microphone preamps. Um, so yeah, I did some demo recordings with Ascended Dead. I guess my first real band. Um, and that was I was still in high school when I started playing with those guys. I was 17. Um, and yeah, we did some demo recordings, and I saw what other engineers were doing, and I was thinking, you know what, I've done a little bit of recording just throughout the years. I've always recorded myself playing and recorded rehearsals just to have. Um, it was either like a cassette recorder or just through like GarageBand or whatever was on the computers at the time. Um, So
Mhm.
then I just started buying microphones, and then I bought an interface, and then that started expanding, and then I started recording demos and rehearsals, and then just obsessing over it and tinkering over it, and then it got to the point where labels started asking us to do something like a 7 inch or something like that, and then I would have the capability to just track everything, and then maybe mix it or send it off to be mixed. And the more I did that, like the more I've learned from it, and that's been the same progression where every session that I do, a recording that I do, I'm learning new tips and techniques. And I've also gotten the opportunity to record at a lot of bigger studios and just doing drum sessions and things. And I'm always like the one bugging the engineer or just sitting right behind him watching him the whole time. So I've learned a lot from doing recording sessions and learning from recording engineers. Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, actually, funny enough, that's actually a good tie-in to something else here. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
whenever I was doing my research about you prior to the show, and that back in 2020 you played on Skeletal Remains and Two Men of Chaos album,
Yeah.
and not
Oh.
only phenomenal performance but phenomenal sound too, and of course perfectly ties into an episode Ricky and I did 3 years ago with one of my heroes in not only music but in recording, and that being Dan Swano.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, who of
Yeah.
course mixed Entombment of Chaos and mastered it and such. So,
Yeah.
um,
The list goes on.
yeah, the list goes on with that guy, not only in production but in bands that he's been in. But like,
Right.
whenever you guys were working with Swano back at the time, like, what was he like to work with when it came down to like
Mhm.
sending stuff for him to mix and master for the album?
I actually didn't have any hand in um like talking or dealing with Swano at all.
Mm.
Um with that record we rehearsed for about a week or so um in Los Angeles. And Chris from Skeletal Remains, he had sent me all the demos because he writes and arranges everything, and he also he wrote a good amount of those drum parts too, just programmed them out. Just the basic outline, and then I kind of did my thing with them. But day one in the studio, this was like I think it was must have been around March of 2020, or it was right when the lockdown happened with COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, we recorded with John Haddad at Trench Studios in Corona, California, just outside of Los Angeles. Which this was pretty cool, I guess, to get sidetracked. I've been recording at that studio and with John since I was like, I think the first session I did there, I was 15 or 16. So it was cool to come back to do like an actual real like
like
album
professional
there.
recording.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we did the
Yeah.
first Ascended Dead record, but then I was like, this is the first time where it's kind of a bigger label, and I'm a session drummer on this album.
Yeah,
But that was right during the
Yeah.
shutdown, and everyone was kind of paranoid because nobody knew what was happening. So I ended up going there alone to the studio and tracking just me and the engineer John. And I mean, I've known him for a long time, so it's always cool working with him. Um, but they wanted to keep it to a minimum, like who was at the studio, because the studio's out of his house and he has roommates and things.
yeah,
So just to be safe, I stayed there, and I was supposed to be tracking for I think a week, but we ended up. I think we finished in 2 days.
Wow.
Mm.
Um, and
Wow.
then once I was done with that, I didn't really hear anything until we started getting mixes from Swano, and so I don't know what was going back and forth, but I'm pretty sure he keeps on getting hired because whoever's working
I
with
mean,
him obviously trusts what he does, and he has a real just an amazing ear for what we do.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
as soon as I
yeah,
started hearing mixes, I was like, "Yep, there's the mix right there." Like there's wasn't much to say. I don't know how many
yeah.
versions of the mix they had to go through, but I have a feeling it was very minimal.
I hope it's not as much as they did with Dissection Storm of the Light Spain.
Where there was 3 mixes. Yeah, which
I
we
mean,
we
Oh
talked
I've
to him
done
god.
about that.
records. Yeah, I've done records where there's like 25 revisions and stuff, and it's always funny because then you go back and listen to the first mix that the engineer did, and that's usually the best one.
Yeah,
But yeah, like I wanted to tie in the whole Dan Swano thing, not only because selfish purposes, because I mean Ricky knows how much I love Swano, not only as a musician but as a producer,
hmm,
master,
Yeah,
what have you. I mean, you just look at the litany of all the bands that he's worked with. Opeth, Asphyx, Dissection, Marduk. I mean, it just goes.
yeah,
Still, I'm honored I got to chat with him. Hopefully, we can get him back on here someday for a part 2 and like just discuss more about production because we kind of focus more on the musical side.
yeah,
right.
yep. And
But
I think that was the same year that Renos he released because I think he produced it, wasn't it? On Doors I Lay.
oh, the Thorns I Lay. No, I think that was
Yeah,
2020 is pretty
that's what
certain.
I'm saying. It
But
was
yeah, the same
2020.
year,
Like
yeah, that I worked with you guys, worked with one of Ricky and I's favorite newer bands. Well, we say newer because we
you
discovered them late, but
were,
they've been around a while on Thorns
Yeah,
Highway. So, I mean, he's a
yeah,
busy, busy dude, and I'm guaranteed
yeah.
he's probably working on something big right now. Aside
yeah. I
from
mean,
the Edge of
he's
Sanity
probably working
stuff,
on 5 big records right now,
and
maybe
of
more.
course, when we spoke to him, like the big thing I wanted to ask him because one of my favorite prog albums of all time was his solo album Moon Tower from 1998.
Yeah,
And I've
Oh
been
god.
and I have been for years trying to find a CD copy of that album. The only way to get is either a bootleg or you have to pay like $200 on Discogs. It's like
huh.
No.
that's going to be a tough battle to climb, tough hill to climb. So I asked him about like would there be the possibility of it getting reissued down the road,
Right.
and he's in the process of doing all that with Edge of Sanity and Nightingale, so it's only a matter of time before we do get that Moon Tower
Yeah.
reissue, which
I
That's
mean,
cool.
I'm gonna be so
it
happy when
it took him a while because
Century
that was the same
Media he
time
had
he,
to work out the deal
yeah,
with them to get the licensing and stuff.
yeah. Especially since that was the same time he was doing the Crimson albums, and look, now they're getting remastered and they're gonna be released in
Crimson
August.
2's coming out in August. Crimson 1's already
Yeah,
remastered.
yeah.
Which I do plan on getting those at some point.
Hmm.
right. It's crazy. There's a lot of these bands who are now getting recognition that it seems like back in the day when they were first formed or putting out these records, like a lot of these records, these guys are kids when they're making them, and are
Hmm.
just happy to be signed, but don't realize that they're signing their rights away to the music. And now when
Yeah,
there's a big following, and like I think the genre is bigger than it's probably ever been. Um, Now these guys are struggling to get their rights back so they can press their own music. I think it's crazy, but
yeah.
it does show you never know what's going to blow up 30 years down the road.
Yeah, at the time it was. I must imagine it was must have been difficult for a lot of bands. I mean, no one had the guarantee like Iron Maiden or Judas Priest. The big bands had their own guarantee, but smaller bands like I'm trying to think of a smaller band at the time in the '90s. Like it just for example, I don't know if Opeth has the rights to their
Well, they
stuff.
do. I think how it works with Opeth, they have their own imprint. They just happen to be distributed by Reigning Phoenix Music.
Yeah, But I know there
That
was a
definitely
band.
does seem
Yeah,
to work out. I mean, look at Metallica; they got their own label. They just happen to be distributed by bigger one.
yeah, but yeah, it's kind of difficult at the time. But nowadays, like you said, Charlie, the scene's gotten bigger. More bands have come out, more influence. Like, we interviewed forgetting his name from Necrophagia. Forgetting his name.
Or you mean Necrophobic, Sebastian?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I always get those necrophagia. They're almost
There's
the
so much
same.
necro out there. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, too
I
much
know,
necro.
like a band like that, I would have never discovered them if like people started talking about them more. Trust me, we're accustomed to technical difficulties during the history of the
I've
show.
I've definitely told him that. We were having difficulties when he was trying to use
Yeah,
his laptop, but we've got it.
Oh god.
it's part of it for sure. That's the new age of doing these Zoom meetings. But it is really cool that you're really able to connect with people from all over the world just at the touch of your fingers and just sitting in your own home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which that gets into a more philosophical point about how the internet is a blessing and a curse, but
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think it's awesome. Like I've been able to reach out, like just as a musician, I've been able to reach out to a lot of like drummers and musicians that I look up to, and then just reached out to schedule an hour or pay for an hour of their time just to pick their brain and stuff. I think it's awesome.
oh yeah. Like I mean with our show, like
Yeah,
especially with how much the format on this show has changed cuz Ricky and I as well as a couple other friends of ours have had this show going since 2018.
Hmm.
And it's amazing how we all came together to do this show. It was through Banger TV from their live streams or Lockhorn's debate shows. Because we were always in the comments on those saying, like, oh my god, Edge of Sanity needs to be in Mellow Death. How are you not putting them there? Or blah, 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 blah. And so, because myself, Ricky, and a couple others, we were the regulars, we were considered the horsemen of the crew.
And
We
it was just a joke. It was just a joke. Like, oh, we're the horsemen. And they were like, oh, they're the horsemen. Like,
Yeah,
oh
they actually
shit.
referred to us as horsemen on in their live chats because we were there all the time. And so Ricky reached out to me like, "Hey, would you like to join in on this podcast? We've been tinkering with for a while." And I said, "Absolutely, that sounds cool." And here we are, 7 years and now 86 episodes later. Obviously, over the past 4 years, it's been a little more sparse because, like our other hosts, they most of our other hosts are all over in Europe, so time difference as well as
yeah,
day
of course.
jobs get in the way.
Lie, you know.
So it's been mainly Ricky and I to help carry the ship essentially for the past 4 or 5 years. But the way we've changed our format around, like back in the day, we always used to come together to either discuss and debate about certain topics or just do top 10 lists or the one thing we always do every year is our end of the year album of the year list
Yeah.
episodes during
Right.
Christmas time. But now we've kind of moved away from doing that all the time and focus more on like, hey, let's just get somebody to chat with from a band or producer, artist, what have you, or
Yeah.
even friends of ours who happen to be metalheads themselves. Like this year has been kind of blowing up in terms of having different kind of guests. Like funny enough, right before we did this and before the Zoom debacle I had last week with Alex from Thraxis, the
Yeah.
last episode we did was back in January where we had one of my closest friends, Stella Gray, who's a nurse and a latex model, who just happens
Oh
to be a
wow.
big metalhead and collects vinyl and stuff, even though she doesn't have any now because they've moved a bunch of stuff around. So I have to like, oh, I might have to gift her some stuff at some point. But I digress. But point is, like, we're not just exclusive to. Come back, camera. Thank you.
There you go.
I'll leave that in because why the hell not? But we're not limited to just wanting to talk to musicians. Like, we obviously want to talk to, like, friends of ours who share the same passion of the music we all do, such. But But yeah, so we kind of evolved the podcast from being about like just a bunch of friends debating to a bunch of friends that want to pick the brain of other friends or musicians, artists, what have you, just to be
And
like wow, this was actually some good stuff to talk about. But now that brings me to your drumming because I brought up earlier that of course, you being live with Incantation and Morbid Angel, two massively influential metal bands in general.
Absolutely.
But then of course, you playing with Ascended Dead, and then for like session work, you did the last older album,
Yep.
which vastly different styles, but
yeah,
kind of similar in terms of rhythm and drumming for sure. Like triplet rhythms, blast beats, slow grooves, and even occasional thrashy bits. But
Yeah.
who were some of the biggest drumming influences when it came down to your metal leanings? Like I could definitely tell one that I hear anytime I listen to your drumming, and that's
Yeah.
obviously Pete Sandoval.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as far as like, yeah, even when I'm playing extreme metal, a lot of my influences come from like things outside of the genre. I think when I get too zoomed in on like because it's I mean what we're doing is really basic. I mean I'll take influences from it doesn't even have to be music. It can just be anything that like just gets me inspired. But I guess as far as like extreme metal drummers, yeah, Pete has been like ever since I was a teenager hearing like Terrorizer, World Downfall, and all the Morbid records. There was just something that like I could just identify with like in his playing where it just wherever it came from, he just has a certain feel to his playing. Like you can I've always been drawn to musicians like that. I mean, I guess he's really musical with his playing. I don't think of drums. I think of
Yeah,
just him carrying the song. It's like just the way his dynamics are, and you can listen to just a couple measures of Pete's drumming and you know it's Pete right away. And I've always thought that was really cool. You can hear that also with Bill Ward or um, yeah, I mean the list goes on with drummers like that, but
yeah,
I mean there's only a handful of guys where you can really like just listen and it's very musical and you know it's them right away. So yeah, that kind of nails it with Pete and also like Jim Rowe on the Incantation records.
hmm
I mean all the projects that he's done. That's another him and Kyle both have their own styles and it's very distinct. Like when you listen to anything with them playing, you can tell it's them. And um, yeah, that opposed to some more. I mean, there's a lot of great technical players and stuff, and the all of those drummers are technical in their own way too. But um, they're you can tell they're playing for the song and they're listening and they're musicians, not just drummers playing beats.
yeah.
Um,
yeah,
Yeah,
so
like
yeah,
I would
definitely.
definitely make the argument like Pete Sandoval's style, watching like not just like music videos or concert videos, but also like demonstration videos he did back in the day where he'd play drums over classical music. It's like you could
Yeah,
call him a
oh
classical
god,
drummer because he's playing beautiful drums over like Mozart and Tchaikovsky and Bach and all this stuff. And it's like I never would have thought to hear blast beats or like catchy groove pockets in classical music, and he can make it sound wonderful. And of course, that technique he does with his foot when playing blast beats, where he's like swinging his foot around like he's putting a cigarette out to get like the double bounce thing. I've
yeah.
I've tried to see if I could pull that off whenever I tried to play drums a while back. I couldn't do it. It's like if I'm trying to play blast beats, I'm either just going totally to town on my foot or alternating my feet on the double kick.
See, it's stuff like that that like can never be replicated, and it comes from way deeper than just his body and his mind playing. It's like, it's it yeah. Whatever when he's playing drums, it's like comes from deep within, and I think everybody listening to those records or seeing him play live can see that. And then I
hmm
guess if we're talking about like drummers in the genre, even though it's hard to even consider him, but Sean Reinert really like
I
if
was
you're
about to
if you're
say,
bringing up anything
yeah,
about metal drumming, like he really changed the world.
yes, he did.
Um, yeah,
yeah.
and
Hey,
and he, I mean, like growing up and studying with, I had drum teachers growing up. I had a couple drum teachers that were really awesome, and we'd study some of Sean's playing, and just listening to the way he like orchestrated himself with these songs, and the way just his placement and timing with everything, that kind of opened up a gateway for me to check out a lot of these like fusion drummers and stuff. And like through Sean, I think a lot of these metal drummers that were kind of just boneheaded, it opened up their eyes to like just exploring other genres, because you can tell that Sean wasn't listening to metal. And I think by the time Human came out, you've seen interviews that he was on to other things, like just
Yeah.
always expanding. And I think that's important for everyone. When you get too zoomed in on something, you kind of lose perspective and you can get lost in this sort of tunnel. But yeah, zooming out and just like being open to explore anything, I think is really important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like definitely. And then like also for me when I was watching like Metal Evolution that Banger Films did back in the day,
Yeah,
the pre-metal episode where they bring up jazz, and even looking up like Buddy Rich for example and seeing how ferocious he was on drums on certain fusion songs and jazz
yeah.
songs way back in the 50s. Definitely, yeah, definitely drummers like Sean definitely kind of opened my eyes to see like what are they doing, how they do it, because yeah, on Human and Focus, I like hearing all the
Oh,
different timings on cymbal accents he's
Yeah.
doing. It's like
yeah.
it's like this has to sound like he's got to have like six arms going at the same time, because I'm watching clips, and even like drummers like Hannes Grossman from
Yeah.
Necrophagus Obscura among many other bands, even
Yeah.
seeing him doing the cymbal accents, the way he hits everything, it's like this is inhuman. But I think probably a drummer that I feel a lot of people sleep on and should discover more, not only because of how ferocious he can get, but the way he embodies a song, Jamie Saint Marat from Ulcerate.
Oh yeah.
Like
Another.
my
Yeah.
God,
Yes.
that those drum
God.
performances, that for those who are watching that don't know, check out Jamie Saint Marat playing drums on Holster 8 tracks live. He is probably, in my opinion, the spiritual successor to a Sean Reinert in terms of keeping that jazz background influence in death metal alive, but just in a totally different area. Whereas, like, you hear him on Human and Focus, that's more like progressive death metal with some
Yeah.
technicality thrown in there. Whereas with Ulcerate, it's technical, but far more evil, far more dissonant, darker. But yet he's able to make these like jazzy inspired drum patterns sound like as if Ulcerate has a lead drummer as opposed to a lead guitarist, because it's like it's him
I mean,
carrying the weight of songs. It's just you have the guitars providing the atmosphere and the darkness, while
Right.
Paul on vocals just spewing out these evil growls on top of everything.
God,
But
God, it's
but
making me
it's
want to see Also Raid. Oh,
if only they were coming to my area, I would go. But
uh,
not. But definitely, point being, like, yeah, as you said, Charlie, with Sean, it's like he definitely changed the game. Everybody.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and he made the band sound great. Like when you hear his playing, it's really serving the song. Like he had the ability to play way more technical and crazy, but you don't even really think of what he's doing. It more just like the songs flow like they should. So I think he knew when not to play and when to play, which I think is really important. And that's also sort of a lost art, is people knowing when to step back. And like the band should sound great. It shouldn't be a drummer that's awesome, because then you're not really doing your job as a musician.
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely letting songs breathe and let the other instruments shine when they have to.
Yeah,
But it
because you're not
always,
there unless I mean, if it wasn't for the guitar player writing the song, then you don't have a job.
yeah. And I was gonna say, and
most
it's
of the
still,
times, most of
and
the
it's
times.
still, and it still blew my mind that Sean never played blast beats. I always wonder if he would have created his own
Didn't
blast
he?
beat. No, he never. He was never a blast beat guy. Like I remember seeing interviews like he didn't feel necessary to play blast beats when he was Death or Cynic or what have you. It's like the fastest he would go would be the classic Slayer beat, which he did phenomenal with, obviously. But yeah, as we
Yeah.
talked about, being way more experimental instead of sticking to one box. But it always made me curious if he did play blast beats, would he have created his own like Dirk Verburen did? He created his own blast beat that sounds
Yeah.
like a high school marching band kind of thing for a football game, but just done cooler. And like watching videos of him and like other drummers like 66 Samus do him, it's like, my God, it's like if only like obviously like I'm talking about myself being a drummer, but I don't consider myself any good. I just play like to songs I've heard before. But when it comes to like me trying to play like say like the Slayer beat for example with just the 1 foot
Mm.
alternating, I can never get it to cooperate, and always I guess my problem is I always want to go fast right out of the gate instead of slowing down at first, but knowing how I am, I just it's that part of my brain that thinks you can do it, but in the end it's like I can't.
No, you're trying to do your best, and you just fuck it up even more and more and more. It's like me with guitar. Sometimes I try to play something like as extreme as what was the last thing I tried to play? Like Ulcerate. I cannot for the life of me play as fast as they do. I just
Right.
can't. I can't.
Which that actually brings me to an interesting question for you, Charlie, and that's is there a particular drum performance you look back on where you think, oh man, I could have done so much better than what I did here?
Probably every record that I've played on, I feel that way
Ah,
about. But
Ah,
so you're kind of in that almost like self-loathing mode of your person of your psyche where it feels like no matter how good it is to others, you always look back on like I could have done so much better.
yeah, I used to, like early on. I used to be that way where I would like cringe, and it'd be hard for me to listen to myself. But then I guess the more records I've done, I've learned to appreciate that everything you do with recording, it's documenting your life and what you how you are at that time. So maybe you have something in your life going on where you're not able to practice as much, so you're playing a little bit sloppier or something, and that's okay because that's the feel that's in your playing at that point in time. So I think it's really cool to document that because like 30 years down the road, you can listen to it and there's something special about it. It'll bring you to like a different period of time in your life. So,
yeah,
and I've gotten to experience that just with records that maybe I recorded like 10 or so years ago, and then I have to relearn those songs. And if someone were to present me the same riffs at this point in my life, I probably would have written completely different drum parts. So it's interesting for me to get into my like 18-year-old brain or 17-year-old brain and like relearn what I played back then, and now I have more capability where I can execute what I was probably going for back then, but wasn't able to physically do it. So that's also a cool thing, and that's a lot like with the Ascended Dead material. We'll go back and play demo songs, and now I'm able to execute them like I would have wanted to back in the day. So that's also really cool.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm guessing it must have taken you a long time to get as good as you're right now. And I want to ask you this, and I'm kind of curious about this. Being that you've been a metalhead for, I'm guessing the majority of your life, listen to this extreme kind of music that we love
Yeah.
and adore. What can you say? Maybe your top three, maybe just one album that you can say changed your life.
Like as far as a metal album,
Yeah.
It just has to be
Or it could
metal
be a
any
combination stuff.
yeah, yeah. It could be combination of a lot of stuff.
um, probably like self-titled Black Sabbath definitely changed my life. And oh, there's been a lot of records that have really been like life changing. When I first heard Billy Cobham's Spectrum album, uh,
Mm.
that's another one where that just totally changed the way I look at things. Um, Also, Chick Corea Return to Forever. That's another
Oh,
album.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
I
But
need
then
to dive into.
if
I
we're
need to
getting more
dive
into
into that.
extreme metal, then like Terrorizer World Downfall. That's getting like into real extreme, but also like
Mhm.
first time I heard like Slayer Haunting the Chapel or Hell Awaits or South to Heaven. Like any like when I first started hearing Slayer when I was a kid, that was also the most intense stuff that I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
Um, Possessed Seven Churches. That was a record that really like the first time I listened to or like even tried to listen to that record, uh, I was like scared or like not scared, but it freaked me out. It was like too much.
I was the same way
So
with Slayer.
Yeah, so I turned
that
it off,
so
and then it was the same with Incantation, the Mortal Throne record. Where
mhm.
I would listen to it, and I was intrigued by it, but it was just like too much for me. Like it was kind of not freaked me out, but it was like I didn't really understand it. So, but it kept me drawn to it, so I kept on listening until I could understand it. And it's
Yeah.
funny because
So yeah,
yeah, I'll listen to those records again, and every time I listen to some of those records, I hear something different, and usually that's a record that like will kind of age well for me when I can put it on and I can hear something different or a different sort of effect on the vocal or whatever it is.
Yeah.
yep. So
Yeah,
with me, it was actually now that you mentioned you got scared, it kind of brought me back, and I've always told the
yeah,
story, Levi. To me, when I started getting into black metal, I didn't touch black metal until like years after because I remember this was like my during high school. I was getting the most extreme at the time was Slayer for me, and I wanted to dive into more stuff. But and then I discovered Venom. I mean, listening to Welcome to Hell and having the
right.
pentagram at the front. And I first listened to it, I was legit scared. I thought I was actually gonna go to hell. I was like, "Am I supposed to be listening to this? Why am I listening to this?" So I kind of like stepped away from black metal and discovered death metal. And with death metal, for me, was much easier, being that I'm a horror guy, like horror movies. So songs talk about Evil Dead, The Exorcist, songs like that was easier for me to get into death metal and discover like Death, Cannibal Corpse, amongst others.
Yeah,
And then after tackling death metal, I went back to black metal and I was like, why was I scared of this in the first place? You know?
Yeah, I could say I was kind of the same way too with like early on, like so for you, Charlie. So like whenever I was first getting into metal, I brought up earlier that at first it was Metallica, Alice in Chains, Pantera, courtesy of my older brothers. Um, and then, funny enough, through video game soundtracks and professional wrestling was where I was discovering more stuff. Granted, at the time it was more the post grunge thing because
yeah,
that was our era growing up, you and I, when at our respective ages. That was the big thing. That was the big hard rock phenomenon of the 2000s. But then, like, watching VH1 Classic countdown videos of, like, top 40 greatest metal songs and discovering Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and more Black Sabbath than already heard on the radio. Then by the time I get into middle school, I discovered Slayer and Exodus, Testament, discovered thrash, and initially, I tried to give death metal a shot, and at first, I fucking hated it. I hated it at
yeah.
first, mainly the vocals, because I'm like, none of this makes any sense. But then I get to, but then I get to high school.
It still doesn't make any sense.
It
No.
really, well, it depends on the vocalist, obviously, but we
hmm
digress a lot. But
hmm
then high school comes around and discover Death Clock, Death, Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel, Obituary, among Deicide Possessed, so many others. And now, death metal's overtaken thrash now is my favorite style of metal out there, even though I still love thrash to death. And of course, over time, getting into prog and getting into old school metal, getting into doom and then black metal. Now, initially, I never saw myself being a black metal guy, partially because I grew up in a not really a religious home, but in a Christian home. But we're not like overtly religious. We do our own thing. But over time, I got into black metal courtesy of bands like Bathory, Mayhem, and even going back to like Celtic Frost, even though I
Awesome.
personally don't call them black metal. But it was really Celtic Frost that kind of opened my eyes to going down that rabbit hole. Because even though I think Celtic Frost are more death metal than black metal, but because people were calling them black metal, I'm like, okay, I gotta see this. What's going on here? And then over time, I still, even though Ricky knows this, I am the pickiest person in the world when it comes to black metal because if
Oh, you don't say. You
yeah,
don't say.
because if every song and album is essentially one tremolo chord played for what feels like 15 minutes, but it's only three, and it's nothing but blast beats. Looking at you, Dark Throne, Transylvanian Hunger, then it loses me.
I get it. As soon as like the rock and roll and the and the thrash element's gone, like it's when as far as this extreme stuff, then
Yeah.
I'm kind of out.
Yeah, and people, some people give me shit, and even mine and Ricky's buddies from Thrall's Metal, they get shit for not being the biggest fans of Transylvanian Hunger, but it's mainly because of that. It just sticks to one particular box. It's like Fenris, I'll just play blast beats all the time, and Nocturno, I'll just play tremolo riffs the entire time. It's like you gotta have dynamics. Thankfully, they got better after that with Panzerfaust. Like that's one of my
Yeah.
favorite black metal albums because you can have the tremolos and the blasts all you want. I love it, but not for the entire album where it's just nothing but that for 30 plus minutes. Like obviously on like Panzerfaust they incorporated doom and thrash, little hints of their old death metal sound in there in terms of the grooves that you get, but that's the kind of black metal I always gravitate to. It's riffy black metal where it's not just speed, it's all about how catchy it can get. Like a band that I've gotten into over the past 2 years now, Shooter from Norway,
Hmm.
because man, not only do you get some wild drumming on there, but you get some of the catchiest riffs I've ever heard in black metal, like the song Mouth of Madness, for example. I call that one of the top five most catchy black metal songs of all time because it's mostly rooted in that like rock and roll background that early first wave black metal was kind of built off of, just a Venom and Bathory.
Hmm.
Right.
But like when it came down to black metal for you, like who were some of the first bands you heard, and then what led you eventually to doing session work for last Holder album? Which, by the way, people check this album out; it is awesome.
Hmm.
Definitely like yeah, Hellhammer, Celtic Frost, Bathory, Venom, like the whole first wave. But also yeah, like a lot of those Mayhem records I was really into in high school, and then got into bands like Abigor's a big band that I really liked. Like
I still need to listen to that. I keep forgetting.
there's like it just got some cool like I think it's a two piece. I think they're from Austria or something. But I used to get into those records. There's a lot of like orchestral like percussion, timpani and stuff. So there's always a time and place for. I don't like if I'm listening to anything. It's probably gonna be Venom or Hellhammer or Celtic Frost. Like as far as like yeah, full on black metal goes. But I've always had open ears to like to a bunch of different things. If I'm gonna do a record like the Holder record and they're referencing albums that they're going for the drums, then I'll like yeah, whatever I'm working on, I'll like just pick those influences and pick those records and just kind of like study them for a month or so before I'm gonna do an album like that and just get into the mode and really understand what it even if it's not something that I'm like personally really into, I'll like I can always dive into it and get in the shoes of like the band or like the just how I'm gonna approach the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like definitely when I listened to the Holder album here,
Yeah.
it's like I caught a lot of like some really cool like triplet grooves on the
Yeah.
album, which absolutely love triplet grooves, and I
Yeah.
think it's funny because I did a live stream a little while back. Somebody was asking a question of like, what's your favorite metal album that's not rooted in blues? And one of our friends, Tristan or Boss Antelope on YouTube, he was saying anything death metal, and I'm thinking, well, death metal and black
Well,
metal triplet chugs or triplet stomps, that's based out of the blues because that
It's
because
Really?
you
all
know
it's all
the
rooted
count
in
the count
blues.
the 1 2 3 1
Yeah.
2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 that's all right out of the blues. So it's like no matter it may sound like it's removed from the blues because of just how heavy and aggressive it is, but when you hear those rhythms, it's very bluesy. The one two
Blues.
three one two
Yeah.
three one two three one two three, and I
There's
always love
also
that because it's
yeah,
so fun.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everything we do is rooted in blues, and also you can't take Latin music out of any of the extreme metal stuff that you hear. It's
Yeah, that's true.
But so now to kind of touch on like how your relationship has come to be with Incantation. Like you've been a live member since what 20?
yeah, I think the first tour I did was 2019. It was
Ah,
Devastation on the Nation, I think is what they called it. It was
that's a
that
hell of a
tour.
tour name.
It was yeah, it was speaking of black metal, it was Dark Funeral and Belphegor and Incantation, Hate,
Ooh.
and what were the other bands? Nightmare and Veil of Nath. It was kind of this big tour package. That was my first tour playing with Incantation.
So, so like, how did they get in Like, how did John and company get in contact with you? Thinking, well, since Kyle doesn't tour anymore, he's just basically a studio drummer for us now. How did they get into contact with you and be like, we'd like you to come drum for us when we go out on?
Well, I'd been a big fan of the band like for a really long time, and I'd seen them because they're like Incantation. John's always having session members throughout the years. I saw them. They had a session member that came through, and I could tell that they were struggling with the drummer that they had, and there was some sort of problem because there were some songs that I heard in the set list that was like, man, this guy is really butchering this, and just really didn't have good taste or intention. You could tell like he just didn't even care, and I was like, man, for a band with this legacy to have a session person that's just like really blowing it. As a fan, I was bummed out, but I was also was thinking, man, they're hurting right now. So I
Not
remember
to name
being kind of
names.
yeah, I remember being frustrated when I when I saw that. So I went and just in my rehearsal room. I don't ever do covers usually, but I was like, you know what, I played this with like friends and stuff. I'm just gonna do a cover playing Impending Diabolical Conquest, and I didn't really post it or show anyone, but I had the video. I just did it for fun, and then I saw they had shortly after that they had posted something online. I think that they were like looking to try out drummers to have someone play live when Kyle couldn't. So right away, I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a cool gig." I was at the time I'd just done a couple tours with Skeletal Remains, and that was one of the first times where I had like just learned a bunch of songs really quick, and then gone on tour. So I was thinking, man, it's kind of fun being a session player. It's fun for me to learn a bunch of tunes, and why not do it for like a legendary band that I was a big fan of? So I sent an email with that video, um, just kind of letting them know I'd be interested, and they had a ton of people sending in videos, and I think they narrowed it down to a couple people, and it was like I think within weeks, John, before I knew it, John flew into Portland, and I was in my rehearsal room jamming with him. I was super nervous uh, because I had like a really short amount of time to basically learn a set list worth of songs. But I was so obsessed and I was so driven that I learned a whole bunch of extra songs too. Just being I already knew him from being a fan of the band, but yeah, that was kind of a trip. Picking John up from the airport. I mean, he's the coolest dude, but it's still like, yeah, someone that you've looked up to for a long time as a kid,
Yeah.
listening to the
Yep.
records. That
Yeah.
was pretty cool. And then I rehearsed with them. I was probably like pretty nervous, but we made videos, and John's real calm. He didn't like, I didn't get much reaction out of him. If anything, he was pushing me a little bit if I wasn't making things feel right. So
Yeah.
after he left, I'm always hard on myself. So I was like, oh man, I just blew it. But at least that was, I was just thinking that was a cool opportunity, even getting to rehearse in my rehearsal room. And then like a week goes by, and then I got asked if I wanted to do this tour, the Devastation tour. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that must have been a hell of experience. And leading to this tour, any tour stories, any funny tour stories? Because I always like to ask when we have musicians, like sometimes they may have some of the crazy tour stories or like something funny that happened during tour. So any fond
Yeah.
memories of that tour or just anything just randomly? Because I know there's some people who were like go above and beyond to meet the bands and they sometimes make an ass out of themselves. Not that I haven't done that, but still, it's kind of funny sometimes.
No, that tour, I just remember being like a little bit nervous and just trying to play. I was just like really hyper focused on playing the songs correctly because it's to me it's like, man, I'm jumping into this band that's been around for 30 something years and also has been on tour nonstop. Like at that point they were basically touring every month out of the year almost. So I'm thinking, man, now I have to sit in and make the band comfortable, and like it's my job for them to not have to look back at me like and be worried that I'm going to screw something up. So I was just really focused on like, okay, I'm always kind of visually looking at everyone when we're playing and just making sure that everyone's happy, banging their head, and the fans are happy too. Um, because I'm just like kind of this no name guy jumping in. I mean, I I was pretty much just doing very underground stuff before that. So what I was thinking, it was like, if I'm doing my job, nobody should really notice that I'm there. The band should just sound good. And I didn't even announce I was doing anything because I was pretty nervous. I didn't announce I was doing the tour or anything on social media until like I think 3 weeks into the tour. It was like, by the way, this is what I'm doing. Um, but the first show is like really the only one that really stands out to me, and that was it was a hometown show for me. It was in San Diego, and it was at the Brick by Brick, and that was a sold out show, and that was the first show I played with Incantation. And I remember just being like tunnel vision the whole time, like adrenaline pumping, and probably overthinking way too much. Like I got off, and I was like, "Oh God, these guys are gonna yell at me," and then it was cool. Everyone was happy. So
Yeah,
As long as they're happy, that's all that matters at the end of the day, really.
yeah, yeah, because sometimes, which I hate to say this, there are
yeah.
sometimes diehard fans that are like, "Who is this guy playing on drums? He's
Oh
not good.
yeah.
He can never stand up to Kyle. I mean, what the fuck is
E-
this guy?" Then they see you play,
exactly.
they're like, "What the fuck? This guy's fucking awesome."
Yeah, you're always gonna get that, even if you play 100% perfect, and there's like it's like the best it can be. You're gonna have those weirdos out there, and that's okay
Mhm.
because that's their deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then eventually, I think it was 2023 when you started becoming a live member for Morbid Angel.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Um. So, Scott Fuller, the drummer who played on the last Morbid Angel record, and I think he'd been playing with them since 2017, something like that. Maybe a little earlier, somewhere around that when they kind of reformed with Steve Tucker again. Um, Scott had been a long time friend of mine over the years. Well, yeah, since I was like, he was playing in this band called Abysmal Dawn, and I just had like high school bands that I was playing with, and I remember I think we played a show together, and then ended up recording at Trench Studios where I did. I talked about that earlier, where I did the Skeletal album, and I've recorded with Ascended Dead there. I've done several albums there, but he was he must have been like maybe early 20s or something, and he was living in a room at that house, and he was recording out of there. So he recorded one of my high school bands, and then we just kept in touch ever since. And when he was leaving Morbid Angel, he was basically told me, "Hey, you should make some videos. You playing these? I'm gonna reference your name for this. They have this 40th anniversary tour coming up." Um, so he played a big part in that, and also I was Dan, guitar player Morbid Angel, was filling in for. He was filling in bass with Incantation on several tours for about a year or so. So I was already tight with Dan, so that was another reference there. And um, Incantation had toured with Morbid Angel, and I think it was the end of 2019.
Yeah,
And that was Morbid Angel, Watain, Incantation. So I had already known the guys, and we toured together, so we got along. So yeah, one thing led to another, and yeah, I got the call. I think I had a month and a half or 2 months to get prepared and like learn. I think it was 17 songs or something,
yeah.
and then jump right on that tour. And that was another thing where it was like, all right, this is a big challenge, and that's another thing where I'm filling in big shoes. But it
Hmm.
wasn't quite as difficult because I had already like kind of gone through that process with Incantation. But yeah, Morbid Angel's a whole different playing style and
Oh yeah.
a whole nother set of skills and things like that.
Different animal.
Yeah, but still, like it's both bands have been kind of my favorites of the genre growing up, and so much a big influence of my playing. Like you can probably hear it in a lot of the stuff that I already recorded
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You are definitely like a style hybrid.
yeah, exactly. So it was like, wow, I never expected to actually be playing with these guys, but so yeah, that was it was really cool to get that call, and it was something where I was whenever there's a big challenge, like your first decision is like, oh, maybe I can't do it, but then I was thinking, what am I gonna say no? What, because I'm nervous? Like
Right.
you're better off
Like,
just like going for it and trying your best, and if you fuck up, then it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
hmm,
exactly.
yeah.
Which, which that actually brings me to, well, kind of a sad story, but last year when you was playing in Morbid Angel, of course, there
Yeah,
was that horrifying tornado that happened in
right.
Illinois when you guys were playing with, I think it was Revocation, so,
Yeah, that was
or it
that
might have
same
been, or it might have been Crypta. I forget.
that
Was
I
it
was
Crypta?
think
Crypta.
It
so.
was Crypta. Where that tornado came through and the roof caved in and like parts of the roof came down and killed a couple of people, or I think it
Yeah,
was just one.
yeah, the whole roof had fallen. That was yeah, that was the Morbid Angel tour that I did in 2023. Um it was Morbid Angel, Revocation, Crypta, Skeletal Remains.
Yeah, sounds
Hmm.
about right. Yeah,
Yeah. And then Vitriol did the last half. Like Skeletal Remains did half, Vitriol did the other half. But yeah, Crypta had just gotten off of stage, and yeah, we were in Belvedere, Illinois at the old Apollo Theater. So, yeah, Crypta had gotten off stage, and then Skeletal was actually setting up, and that's when we got this alert on our phone, and basically everyone was getting rushed to the basement because, yeah, there was a tornado approaching. We knew, like, we woke up in the morning, and they said the show might not happen because there's like stage 3 tornado warnings or something. Um, but according to the local promoter, they're like, yeah, this happens all the time. It's typical, which I think it is typical for that area to be that way. And it was like one in a million chance that it was actually going to strike where we were.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was crazy. It was, yeah. And then within minutes of us rushing to the basement, um, yeah, the sky had turned, and yeah, the wind shifted, and yeah, within minutes, like we just heard this huge bang. It sounded to me, it sounded like we had gotten struck by lightning. It was really confusing, and then I remember rushing upstairs, and you'd look up and you can just see the sky from this 100-year-old theater. And then it took a minute to figure out what had actually happened, but the roof had collapsed on the crowd. just in front of the stage there, and it really looked like everyone was dead. It was crazy. Um, yeah, well, I think what had happened, the sequence of events where yeah, everyone was told to rush to the basement. I'm pretty sure as people were running to where the basement was, there was like the front window of the venue, and I think the wind was so strong it had shattered the glass. So then everybody ran to the center of the room, and that's when the roof had collapsed. That I wasn't exactly up there when it happened, but that was to the best of my understanding. That's what happened. And then I remember before first responders showed up, it was kind of chaos. Just like a group of us jumping in there and like helping people out of the debris, but there was like bricks flying and people trying to like pull people out of the rafters, and there's all this dust from all like it's 100-year-old theater from all the insulation and all that. And I
Mhm.
remember a lot of people having like head injuries, like just like a lot of people were like bleeding out of their head and like just a lot of head trauma because you're getting hit with a roof. And yeah, unfortunately, Fred Livingston passed away, and he was there with his son too, which it was yeah, just really tragic for that to happen. And there were several others that were being taken out on stretchers. I know there was one girl that had a pretty bad spinal injury. Um, so yeah, it seemed like for hours after that, there were just people coming out on stretchers. First responders, they showed up pretty quick, and then everybody was evacuated from the building. And then yeah, I think we had gone to a shelter after that. And so yeah, that was uh pretty crazy traumatic thing to happen. Um,
Yeah,
it's
like I'd
still, I
seen.
think a lot of it's, I think, blocked from my memory too. It's the more I hear people talk about it, the more I talk about it, I can
Yeah,
remember certain little things. But yeah, and then yeah, I've talked about this before on podcasts and stuff, but I found out the morning after that my dad had passed away, and that was like, it was crazy to
scary
me that
timing.
yeah, it was crazy to me that like holy shit, it's to me it always felt like it was related somehow, like a tornado struck this building, and then I found out. Yeah, here I am on this like really big tour, probably like like the best, one of the biggest tours of my life, just like playing in Morbid Angel, and then all of a sudden this crazy shit happens, and then I think there was like another week or two of tour left after that. But yeah, I'd kind of like I after that, I my mind had kind of just like went to a place where I was just I kind of lost touch with reality after that.
Yeah, it was like you try to
Yeah.
get your mind off of it by just focusing
Yeah,
deal
I
with it
was thinking
after.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should go home and like deal with all the funeral stuff and all that, but I was thinking, man, there's nothing I can do at this point. Like I'm way more better off just staying on tour. And at least I get to play drums and be around people. So I think that was the best decision right there. And I actually called an old drum teacher, and he's like, "What are you gonna do? Go home and be sad and sit around and be bummed that you just left this tour? Like go and finish the tour and be surrounded by people and playing, because this
The
is a cool
camaraderie,
opportunity."
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't yeah, just because your dad passed away, like what are you going to do, be sad and angry about it? Like just at least you have an outlet being out here playing. So
Mhm.
Oh
that
yeah,
was so that was actually, it felt really good to play. I think the shows probably got better towards the end.
yeah, yeah. Because I
Yeah.
remember watching like interviews with Crypta that they've done
Yeah.
since that happened, and like yeah, it's scary, scary.
Yeah. I think after that event, the venue I usually go in San Antonio is the Aztec Theater. That
Yeah.
theater's been around for 100 years plus. I think they closed it down for like a couple of months just to like renovate it or like check everything because they didn't want
They didn't
that
want
to
a
happen.
repeat of what happened in
Yeah.
Hollow.
Smart.
Even though we don't get like thunders, we don't get like
Yeah.
tornadoes or anything like that, just as a precaution because you never know.
Yeah, you never think something that like that's going to happen, and then until it does, then I know certainly every time I go into venues I'm like especially when we're in Europe and you're in these buildings that are 100, sometimes like 1,000 years old. So you're always looking
Yeah,
around and just
Mhm.
checking out the
Yeah.
structure.
just to make
I also
sure.
I'll be outside as much as
Yeah.
like everybody knows that about me. Like if I can be outside all day until we play, then I'll be outside.
Right. But speaking of like venues and such, like the venue,
Yeah,
like when I brought up to you before we went live, or not live
yeah.
but recorded, when I went and saw Exciter, Midnight, Wraith, and Hellwitch last year, it was at this little place called the Legends Bar, and it's like in this like little area, like a suburb of Cincinnati, and it was a cool place. Like the fucking bathrooms were just covered in band stickers all over the
Sounds about
place, which
right.
I thought was
Yeah.
pretty cool. The funny thing about that venue was that was the final show ever to happen at that venue,
Oh, really?
closing after that. But I actually haven't looked up to see if like it's got new ownership or it's just gonna be an empty place. It was a cool place. Like I'll be honest,
Yeah.
in terms of like the vibe, probably the best show I've been to thus far, and it was my first ever club show. And
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
everything. Having a good vibe to a place.
oh
I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, like because the two shows I've been to before were outdoor places, and funny enough, the next show I'm going to next will be Pantera. I'm on a Marth tour, and that's going to be
Ooh.
outdoors.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, because I said from the right from the get go when it was announced the Pantera tribute tour was or the Pantera tribute was coming back with Phil, Rex, Zach Wild, and Charlie Benante. I'm like, the moment they do a show in either Columbus or Cincinnati, I will be there, and it's finally happening this year, and I can't. But I digress. But this club, like it was like I said, a cool club. Only problem was, my God, it got because this was in the middle of the summer, obviously,
Oh God.
no AC. So I was roasting in there, but I did not give a shit. I was just there and I was just vibing along to everything going on. It was masterful show, and of course I met Exciter earlier today for the VIP package, but also because Ricky and I were good friends with Daniel DK, the guitarist, so that was a long time coming for me to meet him in person
Mhm.
after we'd been talking back and forth for 3 years up to that point. We had him on this show, and he was the first musician guest we ever had, which where do you think how far we've come since? But I
Yeah.
digress even more. But yeah, it seems always seems like for the most part, club shows tend to be the best ones because you're in that
Yes.
more intimate environment with not as many people to deal with. Well, it depends on the club, I suppose,
Yep. Well,
or in like an indoor like arena that's not insanely big, but like
yeah.
big enough to hold like 1,000 or more people. What
It
would
also
be?
depends. It also depends on the band playing. If it's a big
Yes,
band playing in a club, of course it's gonna get packed.
yeah, and of course, like Exciter, Midnight, two legendary bands for
Hmm.
different reasons, right there, and
Yeah.
then Hellwitch, who actually funny story about Hellwitch, their frontman and guitarist Pat.
Hmm.
I when I met him because I not only because of the music, but I'm friends with his wife. Both of us are friends with his wife. We call her Pixie because that's what she likes to be called, and we used to play like Dead by Daylight on the computer all the time, and she's also a bass player too. And I brought that up with Pat, and he's like, "Oh yeah, she told me about you, and that's awesome." And we took a picture together, and we both sent it to her, and she thought it was the greatest thing ever. So lots of great memories of that night, and that
Awesome.
was towards the end of my 20s where I became dirty 30. Oh, dear Lord, but we're getting old.
Right.
But I want to ask you, like, in terms of like the vibe, like, which do you always enjoy more, festivals or club shows?
I always enjoy the small club shows. If we're in like a shitty punk DIY venue, like that's gonna be way more fun for me than playing at Vakken in front of like whatever there's 80,000 people or something crazy like that.
Yeah,
Um, it's just way more personal. We're playing like the music we play and the music that I'm interested to. It's like it's really deep and is very personal for a lot of people. Like oftentimes this music will like save someone's life as a kid or just like even as an adult. Like this is like it's really kind of emotional and very personal music. So when you're in and everyone can feed off the aggression together and people are going crazy jumping off of the ceiling and there's mic stands falling over and it's just this very direct exchange of energy between the band and the audience where like the band's feeding the audience is feeding the band because like I pick up on that a lot as a player when people are going crazy and super into it then I get more into it so I would say the small club shows are always where it's at and that's where this music belongs.
And on
Yes.
top of that, too, another great thing that for anybody watching that's maybe a newbie at shows like I am to a lesser extent, and you go to a club show, trust me, it's going to be a hell of a time, especially because more often than not, you'll find people in the bands that are playing hanging around in the crowd.
It
Yeah.
does happen. Yeah, it does happen. And one of my favorite club shows, and but still like to this day, like can't believe it actually did happen, was when I saw finally after so many years Swallow the Sun. They're my like my top two favorite bands of all time. I mean, I of course have the banner next to me, and at the meet and greet package, I was able to meet the band, and it was a club show, and I was feeling their energy and the emotions I had during watching them live because they've been a big part of my adult life, going through so
Yeah.
much shit that seeing them live after like 5 6 years of me wanting to see them live, I let all that emotion out, and me having eye contact with Miko and Juha and Mari and Juho, Juso, everybody in the band. I just felt like I was literally, I was like in heaven. I was in heaven.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. It's like the yeah, with shows like that, it's like the audience is very much just as much of a part of the show than the band is performing.
Hmm.
Rather
Yeah.
than a band on a big stage where the audio is pristine and you're so far away and you have these video screens and then people
Yeah.
are sitting or just standing in a big field, it's like that's kind of lame. I mean, it's really cool and it's awesome. I love these big summer festivals, but
Oh yeah.
it doesn't compare to the small club shows at all.
Oh no, no.
But actually, I completely forgot what I was even going to say. Now I just got dumbstruck for a
Brain,
second.
brain.
Yeah,
You
Brain
got
fart
brain
number
farted.
one. Brain fart number one of of 100 million. Who's counting
absolutely. Yeah,
now?
Thousand.
now you're welcome to your 30s.
I know, right? Holy crap! But yeah, actually, funny enough, when I was talking about when telling to the audience watching that, like, yeah, if you're going to a club show, chances are you could possibly meet the bands in the crowd. Like,
Oh
I
yeah.
was when I was in the crowd for the Exciter show. Like that was where I met Ben from Acid Mass because he recognized me and he gave me a couple CDs as a gift. And then, of course, because right there on the floor to the side was all the merch, and like Pat from Hellwitch, he was doing merch on his own. That was how I got to talk to him and bought a couple Hellwitch albums and took the picture with him. But also, while I was talking with Ben from Acid Mass, the guys from Wraith were standing behind us talking to him. And Daniel DK's walking around in the crowd just having a ball. So it's like chances are for like the newbies that want to go to a club show, be on the lookout because you could run into some really cool people. Hell, after Midnight played, Athenar went off the stage and went outside for a little bit, and I went out there and got to meet him and took a picture with him. I actually
Yeah.
met him before the show because after the Exciter meet and greet I did, and I was waiting for my ride to come by. I was hanging out outside, and this van pulled up, and it's Athenar or Jamie without the costume. And I met him, and he was pretty cool. We didn't get to talk really at all. We just said hello and shook hands, and then took a picture with him in the costume. So I met him in two versions.
Was.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I met the
It's
dual
kind of, yeah,
personality.
it's a
yeah.
small
It's kind
world,
of,
definitely.
it's
Yeah.
kind of with me with Michael Graves from Foreman of the Misfits. So I've seen him twice. Both times I've met him without the makeup and then with the makeup, and you just get that transformation of the two. I'm like, what the fuck? You're not the same person I met you like an hour ago to like on stage. But it's cool sometimes when because you never know who you're gonna rant yourself into. I've had my couple of encounters, big encounters over the years since I've been in more concerts than this guy over here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's generally pretty cool when you meet people and you find out that they're really cool people as well.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate when you find someone that you look up to and they're kind of a dick, or they're like not friendly with the fans, and or like really when people are doing this type of music and they take themselves very seriously, that is just it's hilarious to me. And
Yeah.
you see a lot of that, and it's like, man, you picked the wrong genre, and B, it's like if you're so miserable, why don't you go do something else with your life? Because this is, I
Exactly.
think, what we get to do, travel around, play music, like it's really cool. It's definitely something that I'm very grateful for.
Hmm.
And of course, over the years of touring, especially when you're doing like European runs or festivals and stuff, and legendary bands go on
Yeah,
before and after and such, like,
yeah.
because I would always say if there is one musician that I would die for to meet in person, James Hetfield of Metallica.
Yeah, I had
Because
a feeling.
I've seen like in interviews with him and how he is with fans, he's like one of the most personable people in metal because he keeps to himself a lot of times. He's not a spotlight hog like Lars. I love Lars, but still, like, I can, even me, the biggest Metallica fan in the world, will admit Lars is a bit of a glory hog. I will fully admit. But I don't
A
think he's a
bit,
bad guy. I don't think
a,
he's
I,
a.
a bit.
Okay, a lot. He's a lot of a glory hog. But I wouldn't
I've heard
mind.
nothing but yeah, I've
But
heard
I
nothing
wouldn't
but good
mind.
things.
But yeah, if I met him, I'm sure he'd be super super cool. Like I've seen,
Yeah,
he's
Oh
great with
yeah.
fans too. But there's just something about with Hetfield though, mainly because like whenever I'm home alone or if I'm just keeping to myself, I'll sing to myself a lot with the headphones on. James Hetfield was one of my biggest singing inspirations because I'll sing to myself a lot, and it was just something about him that just brought out my inner metal when I was a kid. So Hetfield would be at the top of the list of people I would love to meet and get to pick his brain about, like, man, how do you
Oh
do
god.
those fast downstrokes with your technique of picking like that? Because it just
I
looks
have a
like it feels like the most uncomfortable thing, but yet he's, in my opinion, he is the king of rhythm guitar. No one better.
Tony Iommi's
I'm
up there.
talking rhythm. I'm not talking leads or
Okay.
riff writing. Like
Okay. In
riff
terms,
writing, it is Tony, with Hetfield being a
yeah.
very close second. But thrashy rhythm play, Hetfield's the king. But he would be at the top of the list. I can technically cross Dan Swano off my list because when we had him on here a few years ago, Michael Ockerfeld's one I would love to either
Oh
talk
god.
to on
yeah.
here or
You
in person.
you would cry the entire
I
time or just
probably
be
would.
frozen. You'll be like, I feel if we ever had microphone on the show, I'll be doing most of the talking because you'll be like,
I don't think it'll be like that. Don't get it twisted, buddy. It won't
yeah,
be
hey,
like
you
that.
never know. In the moment, you'll be like,
Maybe
oh
for
my
like
god,
2 seconds. Maybe for like 2 seconds.
this next
But
song.
the point I'm getting to is with you, Charlie, with doing all these tours and going all over the world, and especially at the big festival shows. Was there one particular musician that you got to meet and thought to yourself, "Oh my god, that really just happened"?
Um, it's tough to say. I've got like I guess from touring all this, I've gotten like it's hasn't made that it's not as big of an impact as it used to be like when I was way younger, because now you play these festivals and you see everybody around. I remember like um I think it was like a Decibel Metal and Beer Fest 2018. I was playing with Skeletal Remains, and me and my friend Johnny were we showed up early and we were like going to the catering, and then like Tom G Warrior walks up and like I remember. I mean, we had been like teenagers worshiping this guy, and then we're just like eating cookies, watching him grab some food in the catering. So that was like, whoa, that's crazy. We're in the same world here. um, but
He's
there's been
another one
people
of
that I've
them.
met that have been really cool. Like uh, Vinny was doing like the Sabbath Nights thing, and I got to meet him, and he was hanging out before and after the show, just being super friendly, talking with everybody. Like he didn't even warm up on drums because he was just busy having conversations with people. Um,
Very
yeah,
underrated drummer, people.
yeah, him and his brother Carmine. It's just like those are two huge influences, and yeah, meeting Vinny and talking with him, like he just treated me like I was one of his buddies, or like that's how he's treating it. That's how he was treating everybody, and that stays with you for a long time, especially when it's someone that you look up to. Um, because I've seen people that are like think of themselves way more highly, and they're playing in like death metal bands or whatever, and or black metal band, whatever it is. People that take themselves seriously and like look down and talk down to people. I think it's just there's no room for that here.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had my fair share of meeting many musicians. One of my personal favorites was when I met Jeff Becerra of Possessed last year. That was an experience I never thought I would ever happen because, I grew up, well, didn't grow up, I started listening to death metal because of, Possessed and Death, and being that I met one of the godfathers of death metal. I'm like, holy shit, that just happen? Did I just met Jeff Becerra?
And he brought
One of
you
the
on the
coolest.
tour bus too.
Yes, he actually brought me on the tour bus, and I was like the entire time,
You were like a
what am
kid in
I
the candy
doing this?
store.
Yeah, and he was in the back just jamming to death. I think he was playing. What was he playing? He was playing spiritual healing, but I'm trying to remember the song specifically.
But regardless,
But regardless, but still, I was able to hang out with him with a couple of guys he brought up on the tour bus. We were talking, we were jamming in music, we were just picking his brain, and full out great, amazing guy. And another time, and two of my personal favorites, which unfortunately they passed away, was of course the guys from Brujeria, Bor Juan, Brujo, and Pinche
Oh yeah.
Peach. I was able to meet them after the show. Cool guys. And again, this is a band that I grew up listening to because, Brujeria. But again, now that they both passed away, it's kind of like, wow, I can't believe I had the opportunity to meet them because, I mean, you never know. You never know tomorrow. You never know someone you look up to, you meet, and then next day they're gone.
Yeah, it'll happen when least expected.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like that was the same thing with me whenever, because me being the big wrestling guy, I was at WrestleMania 30 11 years ago. Ultimate Warrior was there for his Hall of Fame speech. I didn't get to go to the Hall of Fame, but he was there at the WrestleMania show, then was on Monday Night Raw the next night, and then passed away the next day. Just crazy how still I don't,
Yeah,
but it is
especially
wild.
especially after that promo.
Hmm. Absolutely. But like But like other people that I would put on a list of people I would love to either have on here or just meet in person to pick their brain. Peter Tattergan from Hypocrisy would be
Oh,
mainly
gee.
because I feel like his humor and my humor are so similar. Like the dirty humor, the stupid humor, because I may be 30, but deep down I'm an immature bastard. I know that.
I think we all
We
are.
all are deep down some way, shape, or form. I mean, let's be real. Anybody that says they're not, you're either lying or you're just completely misinformed. But
Absolutely.
but uh, but like seeing how goofy Peter gets, it's like I feel like I could really have a blast just pissing my pants and busting a gut at some of the stuff he'd say or come up with. And definitely another one, even though passed away 15 years ago. Actually, both of them, Dio and Peter Steele.
Oh yeah.
Both of those guys would have been amazing, especially Dio, because like you see in his interviews and interactions with fans, another one of the most appreciative and approachable people out there. And like even if you screwed up, he's forgive you instantly. Like Chris Jericho, not only legend in wrestling, but he's become a pretty big figure in rock and metal as a whole with Fozzy. He brought up a funny story of how when he first met Dio, and this was at the height of his wrestling career, and he saw Dio play, and he got to meet Dio and had a good time, and they took a picture, and he had like a wine glass, and he accidentally spilled wine on Dio's shirt, and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry! Don't put a curse on me." And he's like, "Ah, don't worry." Dude. He goes, "Did you just put a curse on me?" Nope, that's just a sign of love. Like that would be fun, and then of course Peter Steele. I mean, again, the humor I can easily relate to his humor, like dry
Yeah,
or sarcastic humor, dirty humor. It's like he and I would have been like close buddies if it was a different world
yeah,
still around
Right.
yeah.
and all that.
And for me, of course, like anyone from ACDC would have been like exception, especially Angus,
Yes,
because he's like my in terms of like guitar, he's one of my guitar heroes. Lemmy would have been another cool one because I've heard Lemmy was a really down to earth guy. I mean, he wasn't rude or anything. He would just like just hang out.
I mean,
But
of course, the guy
like
did almost every drug you can imagine except cocaine and heroin, and yet never went nuts. He was just always, "How's it
yeah,
going?"
I know it's never gonna happen, but anyone from Sabbath, Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, Bill, even though they're
Yeah.
getting up in age,
And
uh,
kudos to them for putting on a hell of a show last night.
oh,
I
it,
didn't get
it
to see
was
it.
an amazing show. Or,
Awesome.
or
Yeah.
hell, or hell, I would love to meet the guys from Slayer, either Tom or Carrie or Dave. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, imagine if Jeff was still alive, he would have been fun brain about guitars and such.
Oh God! I think Eminem
Yeah.
would have
Maybe.
kicked the fuck out with guitars.
Oh, yeah. But hey, but actually, funny enough, bringing up Jeff brings us back to another episode we did a while back, the Jeremy Wagner from Broken Hope talked to, and how he has managed to keep Jeff Hanneman's legacy alive in terms of playing the guitars he had and keeping that legacy going with the guitar estate that he owns now. It's like
Oh, I
kudos,
didn't realize that.
kudos to Jeremy. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
because I remember, I think it was. I can't remember when the interview was posted, but he did an interview for ESP Guitars, and he talked about how he bought Jeff Hanneman's guitar estate to keep his legacy going because he was such a die-hard fan of Jeff and Kirk Hammett too.
That's wild. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's he's holding on to history there.
Oh yes, absolutely, and even Gary Holt still has some of Jeff's stuff to this day.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
As I mean, yeah, nobody would have thought Gary would be permanent in that spot, and that Jeff's gone. But But yeah, I think that's actually a good place to kind of wrap it up for this time
Yeah,
around.
man.
This was such a fun time, just not only to get to pick your
hmm
brain, Charlie, but also
Yeah.
just like as if we're buddies at a show, just meeting for the first time, and like, hey, you should check this band out. Which
Yeah.
actually, I'm not sure if you're familiar with these guys, Blood Red Throne.
Oh yeah. I remember maybe like mid 2000s seeing that logo around more.
Yeah, yeah, we've
yeah.
become pretty good friends with the guys because
Cool. Where are they
we've had
from?
Norway.
Norway.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, like they're such cool dudes. We've interviewed almost everybody in the more recent lineup. Like we had their old frontman Bolt, their current bassist Gunner, who's phenomenal, and their guitarist Yvonne or Meat Hook, who we always joke looks
hmm
like a European Dimebag Daryl, and he plays Deans like Diamond. Even people were chanting "Dime, Dime, Dime" at him, and he thought it
That's
was the
pretty
greatest
funny.
compliment ever. So we're just missing the drummer Freddie and guitarist and founder Daniel, and we will have interviewed everybody in the and their new frontman Sindre, and then we would
Yeah.
have interviewed everybody in the current lineup. But yeah, BRT, phenomenal, underrated band. Like I would argue, the most underrated death metal band of the 2000s to now, because they're very almost like Cannibal Corpse, but with, I would argue, a little more melody in the guitars and even in the bass. So if you ever decide to check them out, feel free, because it's meat and potatoes, but it's the best meat and potatoes you could eat. I
Yep.
would
Yeah,
always say.
yeah. Send me some links, or feel free
Oh,
to send me links
absolutely.
of any new music
Yeah.
that you think is cool.
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, drumming, not the most showy, flashy drumming, but it serves the song so well over the years.
That's good.
But yeah, just great stuff overall. But, anyways, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching, and once again, thank you, Charlie, for taking the time
Yeah.
out of your day. Probably have to bring you back for a future episode where we could just discuss albums, such, and
Anytime.
like
Yeah, I would
dissect.
love to.
Yes.
Yeah, because this was a ton of fun. So, actually, just a quick update for all the audience watching the recording here. So, future episodes, hoping to get our friend Stella back as well as her boyfriend Drew, and that's
Yeah.
just going to be largely just a hangout, nothing, no interview particularly. Eventually, we got the Arthur Risk
Yeah.
interview down the road.
Nice.
Hopefully John McEntee as well, because that's been the plans for a couple of years.
I'm
Now,
surprised you haven't.
well, we were going to a couple
Well,
years
we
ago.
were.
We were going to a couple years ago, but I think something happened, and I don't know what happened. But maybe if you could help us out on that, see if we can get him.
Yeah,
Because
you'd probably enjoy talking to Luke. Also,
oh yeah,
he's
Yeah.
awesome to just talk metal with, and he's a really cool dude. Yeah, I can get you in touch.
thank you very much. That means a lot.
Hmm.
And then of course, like actually, thinking about. Well, actually, I did reach out to Paul from Blood Incantation too about having him possibly on.
Hmm.
Haven't got a follow up on that yet, but we'll see where that goes. And then, of
Yeah.
course, one episode that I've already got circulating in my head since I brought up BRT, getting their original bassist Erlen Casperson on here and talk
Mm,
about his time here as well as what he's doing
yeah.
in Igor and all the other bands he's been in, like Spawn of Possession, Deeds of Flesh,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
We also gotta bring back uh shit, I forget his name. Jeff back
Yeah.
from Broken Hope. We gotta bring him back. It's been a couple of years since we
Oh,
had that
Get
talk.
Jeremy back, yeah, because
Yeah,
sure
Jeremy.
he's been working on books and such. But anyways, those are all in the future. But anyways, let
Hmm.
us know in the comments below how did you guys enjoy this episode, and hopefully we'll be back here very very soon for episode 87. But until next time, all you metalheads out there, keep your horns high. Also, keep your